Hi, it's me, Michael Bell. We're back here with Dialogue 340. I am joined by the one and only Sejah Farms, aka the Brown family. You already know we are back. It's Ag Fair Week, and it's also Valentine's Day week. So shout out to all the lovely ladies who watch Dialogue 340. And of course, we're here on our topic today on Dialogue 340 as your host here is agriculture in the U.S. Virgin Islands. So to jump right into it, I guess we're going to talk about the cultural and economic importance of agriculture. Historically, agriculture was a foundation of the Virgin Islands. Approximately 97% of our produce is imported rather than exported to us. And agriculture contributes to less than 2% of the USVI's GDP. And farmers struggle with challenges like limited access to land, meaning long waiting times for available land. We know that there's a lack of labor, lack of structured consumer markets, and also financial support and government incentives to get involved more frequently in agriculture. So I guess my first questions to you guys is how was the shift to food imports impacting local farmers and consumers?
The take on it is simply this. Moving away from agrarian community or economics has actually disenfranchised the Virgin Islands. If we look around, there were the mom and pop stores, and most of their produce would have come from a farm. So today we find gas stations that are food markets. We find grocery stores that are importing large amount of food. Our population have grown significantly from maybe in the 1930s from about 3 to 4,000 or 10,000 people to today, less than 100,000 people. So the need for food development and those food coming in actually drive out those mom and pop stores and actually demise the development of our agriculture. Like those who are forebearers of the territorial agricultural development saw an opportunity where the territory can sustain itself. But the leadership above them did not understand. In other words, they look at agriculture as not actually being sustainable or not being economically viable. But yet still within our laws within the territory, it states that the Department of Agriculture is supposed to find ways to make it more viable, to make it more economically viable. And that's no stretch of the imagination to do that. It takes resources and it takes education to do so. So some of those things that were put in place were education in the high schools. That has been demised. Education or regular updates from the department where the department continue to provide that support. The university, which actually should be an outreach for farmer development as a land grant institution, it has actually moved away from that, especially over the last 20 years. Our Department of Agriculture has been demeaned, put out of place as one of the stepchild of government, where it gives the department what they consider not the funding that is required to promulgate a development of an expanded industry that will sustain us culturally, because most of the food that we eat is not custom, cultural, nor is it traditional. So we have actually take things that are imported to substitute for what we would have eaten culturally and customarily. Like today, take for instance the callaloo. What we eat today as a callaloo is bootleg. Okay? Callaloo was foraged in order to make that dung. And that's what the enslaved Africans used. They went out into the bushes because they were not given the food to sustain them. So they had to find things that were similar to what they were accustomed to from the homeland. And what they did, they made it. They used the amaranth, whitey Mary, popololo, and they made different things that made sense along with what little that they were given by the slave masters. And that's what made them flourish and come through that era. Today, we find that we have different things that are in Kalaloo. Every country or every island actually have developed their own Kalaloo. But the Virgin Islands Kalaloo remains basically the same of what is known that came from Africa. Kalaloo is not an English word. It's an African, out of Ghana, out of Niger, out of these different areas of Africa. So the mere fact that our imports has dominated our agricultural development, it is not totally a bad thing. It's not really all that dark. What is dark is how we approach it in order to make it happen. Because now we are going through a era now, or a period where we have developed an agricultural plan, and it's been in existence for like a year and a half. Okay? One good thing came out of that was to make the funding available for farmers to actually develop themselves, whether it be machinery, fencing, whatever, that will make their farmers sustainable. But that was only $500,000. So only maybe 10 or 20 farmers got it. And we have approximately 565 farmers in the territory.
And that's between the three islands.
And that's between the three islands.
So I think when we think about that, like touching on that, especially like with agriculture in the bush, and it's like a revolving door. We have a lot of opportunities, and we want to see younger people get more involved in agriculture. We seen like the University of the Virgin Islands has started to push more towards the agricultural department and is growing it. So in your minds, what are like kind of opportunities you would love to see for that next generation of Virgin Islander farmers?
I would love to see education. A lot of, especially younger people, believe that farming is just, I have to put my hands in the soil and that's it. Agriculture has different aspects to it. It's not just going out and tending to the cattle. Agriculture includes the chefs that cook the food, the people that teach in schools to teach the kids how to farm, how to, take part in agriculture. It stems on the education that everyone receives, including farmers who are already in the game. There's continuing education out there that can help them sustain their farms better. So by creating a space where, even for us, when we just left this week to go to the farmers conference in Georgia, the South Conference, there was sessions for different aspects of farming. There was how to maintain your chicken coop. I mean, even the simplest things. By reiterating or getting more education on how we can sustain ourselves better, we can use that information to make our agricultural department here in the Virgin Islands a whole lot more stronger.
I think when you look at the agriculture department, we always see farmers want to be a part of this. I think it's an amazing thing to see, and you see local farmers bring their produce every Saturday, and they on the fairgrounds, and they want you to enjoy that with fresh local produce. I mean, in today's age of where we are right now, and in 2025, there's a lot of questions and doubts, and more people are starting to wonder: is local produce has to be the way to go, because we cannot continue importing our own produce. We have the talent and the energy to put towards our own agriculture. So I definitely understand that aspect of it. Some say, but I think agriculture is also generational knowledge. I mean, you've had the opportunity to learn from us, so you're able to have that knowledge, and then in the future you'll pass that on. So I think there are Virgin Islanders that want to be a part of this. They want to be in agriculture. They don't know how. So I think finding that answer is gonna be very important. And I guess the biggest barrier, there was just one barrier that you could break in the agriculture department here in the Virgin Islands. What would that be?
That you have to know about agriculture to start being in agriculture. You don't have to know a thing. There are, like my dad said, over 500 farmers here within the Virgin Islands at all three islands. Get to know who your farmers are. Go on their property. Can I help you? How can I help you? They will teach you. They're all open to teaching because they're all open to expanding what agriculture here is in the Virgin Islands.
But the question I would ask you is, or ask you all, is that is the local food palette able to embrace farm to table?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
It does. Let me add to this. There's over 300 careers in agriculture. And you'll be surprised to know what those 300 careers are. You may think that you're not in it. So do you see yourself in this podcast as an agriculturist? And you will say no. Well, you are part of it. Because what we are doing here now is actually an extension of it. It's all derived from agriculture. Every piece of equipment that is in here is either plant-based, oil-based, from a plant, plastic, you name it.
Even from an animal.
Made from an animal or a plant. Or it's a part of earth science. You have to remember that agriculture is food, fiber, and food fiber and meat. Okay? And we say vegetables. But in order to have that happen, there has to be a science behind of it, and that's earth science. Okay? We may say, we want to separate the fact that the car that we drive has no agricultural aspect of it, but it does. If there's no agricultural aspect in our daily lives, we'll be naked.
And hungry.
And hungry. The first step in developing any community or establishing any community is food. If you take food away, you don't have a community. And we see communities like that have already scattered because of invasion or sanctions against the community and blocking their food development. That's throughout history. Education itself is the key towards the development of our industry here, is renewing the mind to understand that where our food comes from is very important. Today, we have food that are being manipulated, food that are being over toxic. Okay? So if we are not conscious about health itself, our well-being, we will continue to consume that which we know not. You know, you'd be surprised to know how much genetically modified food you consume on a daily basis without knowing that you're consuming it. And local food production or local food movement in the territory is one where we actually look at local food and can actually transcend it to any culture or any person's ethnicity. The food actually brings people together. Food actually binds people in so much different ways, culturally and traditionally. And even so, if you have someone that is not part of your culture, they can actually take what you produce and actually take it into another level of their culture. Now, I am not against import food because we are a diverse community. And everyone has a different palette or things that they like to consume. However, it's up to those food channels or food outlets that will be the ones that will actually are determining or determine what's in this supermarket. So therefore, our production has to be consistent. Our production has to be more marketable in order to meet the standard that was developed for import foods.
I mean, when we think like consumers are always looking for the next big thing. I mean, I have had the luxury us as Virgin Islanders, our grandparents and our great grandparents, they tell you this bush is that bush is good for this. If you eat this, you're gonna feel better. So, and there's still people that practice that, like bush tea. They always have their bush tea. They use the different vegetables, the different produces because it's better that way for your body and your system, and it can help you. I know many times I got sick and just my grandma tell me, put this salve on your skin, and I think it's interesting we have consumers, and I think here in the Virgin Islands there is a market for fresh local produce. I'm noticing that a lot more farmers are trying to be more social media savvy and putting out that content like, hey, this is how we just pick, this is how we just grow. And I think that's one of the most interesting things I've noticed that's picking up in the Virgin Islands, and that is that you guys are getting more involved and sharing your mission and your message. And I think Sejah Farms, you guys are one of the, I think in my opinion, one of the very, very popular when it comes to doing all of your social media and putting all the amazing things you guys have won and done. And I think that story is unique because it shows that there's a new generation of farming and there is a light at the tunnel. We just have to continue the shining a spotlight on it. I guess my next question comes down to like the Virgin Islands on a whole. We know that as consumers, we're funny, we're picky. Some have American palates, some don't have. Some ain't gonna say like, yeah, come to the table for some fish and fungi and all of that. But in my honest opinion for y'all, like how important is it for us to preserve our cultural identity and to preserve that heritage?
I guess you want.
For me, I look at, say for instance, other cultures. When you go to India, what do you eat?
Indian food.
When you go to China, what do you eat?
Chinese.
When you go to Japan, what do you eat?
Japanese.
When you come to St. Croix, what should you eat?
Korean.
Exactly. Our culture is important to us, and it should be important to us because it is ours. If we don't preserve it, who's going to preserve it? How are we going to pass down to our different generations who we are and what we are if we're not passing down our recipes, our cultural practices, our farming practices? What are we passing down to them after that? I don't want to tell my kids, hey, I'm passing on a box of Fruit Loops to you so that you can pass it down to your kids. No, I want to pass down some cornmeal pop. I want to pass down some callaloo. I want to pass down a fungi and fish. I want to pass down a Crujan stuffing. Those are the things that I want to pass down to my kids so that they can pass it to theirs, so they know what their heritage is. If I don't have that, what do we have?
It's true. Well said. I mean, we oftentimes don't look at our culture as being sufficient. We oftentimes grab someone else's to make it part of what we are. One of the things that we have erred on is actually starting our children off in a different palette of what we are accustomed to. The fast food, the chips, all of that. And what that has done is change the appetite of the child for something different. If we can actually go back to basics, then we can actually revitalize our development into food that we consume. And that's why I often say those things that are traditional, cultural, and customary. Okay? Take, for instance, today, I learned this from a forebearer of food. And she told me one time, what's mock turtle? I said, no, I guess that's turtle. She said, no, that's a goat head. So therefore, they could not have gone out to make the turtle part of the diet. So they use the goat head. So it's mocked, right? It's an artificial turtle. And that's what I understand it to mean. You have different foods like beignet. And then, again, beignet is not European. It's Africa. Okay? And we look at these things and take them for granted. A lot of people even think that, what's that name for plantain? Tostones as just being Spanish. It's not. It's not. You know, even some of the words that we use in describing food ain't European. Because most of the food that we're eating today are coming out of South America, India, Africa, China. And those are ancient foods. Most of the foods you find in North America were actually brought to North America. And they are those foods that are indigenous to North America is what you find the indigenous people of North America consuming. Today, they still eat the buffalo. But it's what they have done to integrated that into our food system or into the North American food system. They have created a beefalo, a cross between a buffalo and a cow, to try to assimilate that. But that's not part of the indigenous food. And most of the indigenous people within America, they try to maintain their diet because it's more wholesome to them. It's not tainted. But food is actually should be looked at as a cultural development because we can't do nothing without it. We came in this morning, offer bush tea, something to eat. That's what food does.
It's also part of our culture.
It's part of our culture. If you look at the campaigns that they have, trying cake and fried fish, and a lot of that is going out the door now because they don't want to associate themselves with that anymore. You know what I mean? You can't have a village and you don't have food. We have an agricultural food fair coming up. But the food that you're consuming there is nowhere near local food production.
After hearing what you're saying is, do we reframe our palate to go back to being about fish and fungi in that mindset? Or do we ourselves cut that GDP in down the line by ourselves as local farmers, growing wheat, corn, and all of the other necessary grains that we eat here in the Virgin Islands?
We may not, we want to continue the trend of culture and the consuming of cultural food and to consume those food in the most healthiest possible way. Now, as in reference to growing additional food, we are already doing it. Yeah. There's things like broccoli, cauliflower, different zucchini, squashes. Where we are already doing that. As reference to growing grain, yes, it can be done. And the reason why I say grain can be done because we have livestock to feed and stuff like that. These livestock can be a part of that consumption. Agronomy is food for both animal and human. Okay? So you're talking about introducing other things that are most likely for the development of our food. And we have a diverse community. Sorghum grows in the Virgin Islands well. Yes. We have at the USDA station near the university, they grow sorghum for export. It's not for the Virgin Islands. So therefore, that is something that can be done. Wheat can be grown, rice can be grown in the Virgin Islands. There's a mountain rice or lowland rice that can be grown here. So yes, we can merge all these things together because we do have a diverse community.
I think diversity is important, and that's exactly why here at Dialogue 340 he brought Sejah Farm. So I guess to wrap up, I'd like for you as father and his daughter to offer your own message and take away from today's discussion, but also shout out your company, Sejah Farms, and where they can find you. And yeah.
You can find Sejah Farm of the Virgin Islands at 90 Castleberg across from Cruise and Gardens. The last thing I want to leave with you guys is this. Farming is not just for the older people. Farming is not just for the poor. Farming is for us, my age and younger. We need to be out there working the soil, working the different parts of agriculture to keep our culture, sustain ourselves, better for our kids and for the next generations after?
Now, agriculture is 360, 365. Every day of the year. There's nothing that you can do that separates you from it. You can try it. It doesn't happen. Our take at Sejah Farm is to actually engage our community, because the support system that agriculture should have is not getting that support. So our outreach is to our community, where our community will understand and engage with the development of the industry, and that in itself will go farther than even government involvement. We are very much interested in that our community becomes totally immersed in the development of our industry, and we are willing to give as much information, as much education as we can provide, because food is first. That is the first world culture, is food.
This has been Dialect 340. I'm your host, Michael Bell. I leave my viewers with this question: do we eat to live, or do we live to eat? This has been our agricultural discussion with Sejah Farms, and I leave you with this: happy Ag Fair week. Check out all your local produce, eat local, support local, and of course, happy Valentine's Day. And this has been Dialect 340.